You're listening to Sasquatch Syndicate.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard.
And all the ape believers don't want any of the paranormal believers to say anything because they're all whacked and screwed up and we don't want them. And all the paranormal believers don't want, they're going to the ape believers saying, well, you're all closed-minded. You're not open to the fact that it does this and it does that.
And I look over my left shoulder and this creature is running through the woods and it's bulldozing the brush down. And I knew, man, this thing is going to get me.
Sasquatch Syndicate. I'm your host Chuck, out in Seattle, Washington, along with Paul in Portland, Oregon. Thanks to everyone for listening and those following us at SasquatchSyndicate.com and on our social media outlets. For those participating in the Sasquatch Syndicate monthly T-shirt giveaway, this month's winner was Dennis Lavelle from Redmond, Oregon. So Dennis, thanks for listening to the show, and please check your Facebook for winner notification. Happy July, everyone. We hope you're staying cool this summer. And for those getting ready here in the U.S. for a wonderful Independence Day celebration, please stay safe. Tonight on Sasquatch Syndicate, we're joined by Wayne out in North Carolina. Wayne's had a family of Sasquatch living on his property for several months. And of course, like anyone, would be a little bit reluctant to come on the air and talk about this, not wanting to create a disturbance there on his property. So, Wayne, thanks again for joining us tonight on Sasquatch Syndicate. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about what's going on out there in North Carolina.
We had an ice storm here, and right after that ice storm, we noticed a big X made out of tree limbs. And I mean, we knew it didn't fall out of the sky. And it wasn't even a week later, I'm out there with my dogs, and I found the footprint. And next thing I know, I'm starting to look for the stuff, where before I wasn't even paying no attention to it.
How long have you been having these encounters?
I've been living on this property for 4 years, and up until, I would say, late last year, I hadn't seen any. Didn't know anything about them or anything until I saw that X, and that's when I started thinking something was around here.
So, Wayne, one of the things we've been trying to do is follow weather and migration patterns. Have you noticed anything, seasonal with the Sasquatch? I know that North Carolina had a pretty warm winter.
That's why I believe they came here when we was having like 90-degree temperatures in December. I mean, for anything that's living up north, coming down here would have been a pleasure, but I'm thinking now from all the evidence they've been here all along, and I just ain't never noticed them. And it wasn't long after the footprints, next thing I know, they're coming to my window yelling at me, waking me up in the mornings. I see one across the road, the 15-foot one for the first time, and it just blows me away how big he was. And from then on, after about a couple of experiences, I set some trail cams out there. And I set those trail cams out there to see if I can catch what's been in the yard. And lo and behold, I catch it looks like a picture that I thought was in my trees, but it really wasn't. It was across the road, but the trail cam caught it. And so I knew I had a Bigfoot. I just had to keep them trail cams around, but, of course, the trail cam kept, the more and more I kept experiencing things from them, they stopped coming around once the trail cams were out there. And Then one trail cam I started using, I got a really nice trail cam, and it was getting things across the road. But once I figured out where they were, I took the trail cams down. I said, because honestly, I stopped missing them coming around here.
Wayne, can you tell us a little bit about what the vocalizations sounded like?
All right. Well, most of the time right now, they're whistling at me. They do whistles. And I noticed when that guy was down there, they were whistling at each other. I think it's a way they're communicating. It's like one kind of whistle. It goes, and that's the whistle that they use. It ain't a bird whistle. It's not a bird whistle. It's not at nighttime. I mean, just the other night I'm out there and they're whistling when I'm out there with the dog. So I go back and I said, well, we getting ready to leave to go pick my wife up. I said, well, shoot, I'm gonna see if I can record this. So I take my phone, turn the video camera on, and I'm recording it. And they're whistling. Next thing I know, I get a good knock, and I'm like, this is amazing. You know, they're really active tonight.
So Wayne, can you explain a little bit about your property, where it's located, and why you think these creatures are up there?
Well, I think my landlord, who I rent from, told me there's a really big creek down there back where they're at, and that creek feeds into the river. It goes under the bridge on the interstate, and he said that creek is full of fish. Not to mention, this down here in this area, the deer are plentiful. And from what I understand, where the deers are at is down there where they're at right now. They basically can sit in there and pick off whatever they want to eat without even having to really go far. I mean, I guess that's why they're here. I mean, at first I thought they just showed up to come down here because we had such a warm winter. And then I start finding the evidence all around my yard. They were living here before I even moved here. I just never noticed them. And I don't know why they just don't stay over there and hunt in their own woods, but they seem to like to come over here and hunt at nighttime.
So Wayne, why do you think that they're coming on your property at nighttime?
Well, it's a big open field back behind my woods, so they may be able to just sit in my woods and watch the deer, and then they can just go out there and grab them or what, I saw the first rabbit in my yard just the other day. I was like, wow. I mean, I've not seen any kind of rodent, anything other than I see a 13, 14-foot black snake. I see him once every couple of years. He shows up every couple of years, and I saw him this year. And I'm like, how does a black snake get to be that long? Well, when you're the only thing around here it's eating everything else, you're going to get big. And I kind of think that's why the Bigfoots are here. There's plenty of deer. I know I drove these roads at night. I used to have to drive back through these roads, and you deal with, armies of deers through here. I mean, I guarantee that's why they like it here. They got plenty of what I call plenty of stuff to eat. And
now, have you seen any footprints, and have you tried to take any casts of any footprints that you found?
Well, I'm not very good at casting, but I have took pictures of all of them. Anytime I would find one I thought looked legit, I would take a good picture of it. I've even took measuring tapes to them before and took pictures of them. And, I mean, casting's okay. Casting's okay, but I think a good picture of one, can tell the story just as good as a cast can. I try to take any kind of evidence I see. I take pictures of. I mean, there's a massive X I just discovered in the woods, and you can tell they made it because one tree has been bent completely over the other one, and the other one was a rotten tree that looks like it's been pushed over. And so I took a picture of that. I was like, how cool is that,
So Wayne, you had mentioned you've seen tree structures. What else have you seen out there?
Yeah, well, I got tree structures. I've got tree structures in my woods. I got like I said, I got their beds, the little, how they take and put all vines and stuff and build them almost like it's like a little cabin type thing.
So were they more the igloo type, Wayne, where they were kind of a half dome and kind of made out of sticks with kind of a side entrance?
Yeah, it's kind of like when you see them people on those, Naked and Afraid or Dual Survival, how they will build a hut, in the woods, and they'll just pile trees and limbs on it. But that's what it looks like. But it looks like they took trees and bent them over it, and bent the trees over, and then they laid all these sticks and all this other stuff over top of them. I mean, they're clearly made by them because, you can tell, all the evidence I got supports what's over across the road, And that's what's cool about what I'm doing down here is the fact that as long as I'm here, I'm going to be able to garner more evidence than anybody that's ever known anything about Bigfoot.
So Wayne, you mentioned a little bit about, these Sasquatch being pretty close to your house. Why do you think that they're there? I know you mentioned that you had some logging going on in the area.
these loggers are coming in cutting down their homes. I have noticed something, and I don't know if the people that owned the land knew they were there, but I do notice the loggers left like this strand of trees, and that's the trees they sleep in, and I noticed they didn't cut those down. They cut everything else down but those.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. Up here in Washington State, we actually not only have protected counties, but historically throughout Canada and up here in the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of logging companies that make their loggers sign contracts that if they were to run across an indigenous species, that they need to keep it confidential and not reported. You know, obviously the logging industry would suffer an immense financial impact if they were to discover a species like Sasquatch. So it's kind of interesting that you did notice that. I also wanted to ask, as you're out there in the forest and you've seen some of these stumps, I was just curious, had you ran across any stumps that were decorated with sticks or flowers, as if something were trying to mask or cover up the damage that had been done by the loggers?
Well, I mean, I haven't looked for them, but I guarantee you, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if I don't see. My thing is what I call my deal with those Sasquatches is one thing. As long as I don't invade their area, they won't come over here and do anything aggressive toward me, and they don't. They come over here all the time. I mean, I even one night, this has been about a week and a half ago, in fact, I'm sitting in about 1:30 in the morning watching TV, and all of a sudden I'm hearing this whistling. My dog is sitting over here in the kitchen on a chair, and he never does that. And he's sitting there, and I look over to the window because the blind is up, or they've messed the blind up, and there's a Bigfoot in the window whistling at that dog. And I jumped up, tried to get his picture, but he was gone as quick as I got up.
Wayne, as you say that, what type of dogs do you have?
Oh, I've got like 6 boxers. I got probably about 300-pound boxers, and then I got 3 young ones. You know, they all stay in the house, and I kind of think too that's why they don't deem me as a threat to them, and that's why they don't come over here and mess with me, because they see me how I am with these dogs.
You know, I would just recommend you use caution. We do have a lot of cases up here in the Northwest where Sasquatches have been close by. They never really felt that they were a threat to the dogs, but later on they found their dog dead or eaten, by a creature. And so, just proceed with caution.
There is a story going around that a 15-foot bear knocked a man's door down below here and killed his dog, but there's no 15-foot bears around here. I mean, only 15-foot anything I've seen is those Bigfoots, and I just don't believe they killed the dog, because they've had ample chances to kill the German Shepherd that's up above here that confronts them at night when they try to come over here. And if the German Shepherd sees them, I've actually come out one night and saw her, had them cornered up the road here, and she had them cornered, and they wouldn't even come out of the woods because of it. So,
well, again, as with any wild creature, you just want to take it easy and certainly don't provoke them. And you never know when they're hungry, or when they're in a bad mood, or when you're getting too close. And certainly they'll let you know. But I kind of liken it to the bison videos up in Yellowstone where somebody's approaching a bison because they look so peaceful, and that's how they've always seen them. But the next thing you know, they're up in a tree, and think of the consequences with a creature that's 15 foot tall and 6 to 1,200 pounds, and they're built very much like a great ape. And if you think about the Sasquatch size versus a typical gorilla, and we've done a couple posts out on our website, we're talking about something that may have 5 times the strength of a gorilla.
One of the female looks just like a big female gorilla.
So Wayne, you shared a little bit with me off the air about the one you call King Kong. Can you share a little bit with our listeners about that creature?
I see him all the time. A lot of times, the best time I get them is in the mornings when they're asleep, and I can just aim my camera around out there, and I'll find him in the trees asleep. And I've seen him a couple times. In fact, he's the boss of them all. He watches them. I got too close one day. I went over there with my cell phone, and I was trying to take pictures of them, and I went a little too far close to where they were at. Well, 5 o'clock in the morning, he's in my window giving me the loudest roar you ever heard. I mean, he was so big. I mean, my window's up 10 feet high off the ground, and he's so big he can just look right in that window. And what it was to me is a warning. I don't come in your yard, don't come close to mine. And after I didn't do it anymore, I never got no more problems with it.
So, Wayne, when you think about the size of the creature and the possible strength it has, what goes through your mind?
He would be one, like I said, like they were describing, that you picked up a central air unit and threw it. I think if he wanted to, he probably could take my car and throw it. I mean, that's how big he is. I mean, I wouldn't say he could pick up he may not be able to pick up the car and throw it, but he would be one. If he come up and you made him mad, I think he's big enough he could take one swipe and kill you. I mean, that's how big he is. I mean, when I see him standing amongst trees, and he's taller than most of the trees, but he's not just taller than most of the trees. It's 3 or 4 trees together, and he's taller than them together, but that's the width of him. So he's not just to mention he's super wide, he's also super tall. And that's why I honestly think the trail cams kept popping up over there. You know, they kept finding something really big, kept triggering the trail cams, and you know, but
Wayne, how wide would you say you know, the large one, the King Kong, is at the shoulders?
I would say he's the width. I've seen him. He's usually. I mean, I can't describe it. I could just say you could put three big trees together and he'd be wider than them. I mean, that's how big he is.
Wow.
I mean, he's amazing when you see him. If you just like right now, I'm looking at him. If you see him right now looking down there, you can look down at all those woods and you won't see anything, but he's so big, even if he's in the woods, you see his outline. I mean, that's how big he is. I mean, to see him standing tall, I mean, and I think I was finding the majority of his footprints, because all the footprints I kept finding were 23, 24-inch footprints. And, you know, you measuring 20, I did find one that was like 18 one time, but I suspect that you know, when you start looking at your yard and you start seeing all the footprints of me, my little girl, and then you start seeing everything else, it's like I wear a size 11, and them things, I could put my foot in one of them, and it would still make my foot almost twice the size of my foot. And just as you think about how tall would you think a 23-inch footprint would be? Well, then you got to start figuring, you know, basketball players 7-8 feet tall wear size 16, 17. Even though Wrestle Big Show, he probably wears an 18 or something, and he's 7'4". So you got to start thinking, what's got these footprints? And then when you see what's got those footprints, you got to figure he's anywhere between 12 to 15 feet tall. You know, I know one crazy friend of mine went down there thinking he was gonna find them, and he was gonna get them on. He was gonna find them, and he went down there, and I'm sitting there watching them just hide from him, and they're just looking at him the whole time he's there. And I'm like, the nut's gonna get killed. He keeps messing around, but they're not violent animals, and they just stayed in the shadows and watched him. And now they won't even sleep. That was their bedding area where he walked through. They won't even sleep in that bedding area anymore. And I was like, that's where I could get really good video of them, you know, and they're giant.
So, Wayne, you've had some time to study the different Sasquatch that are on your property. Can you share a little bit about their family group and what you've seen?
I've seen, I believe there's a big brown one over there that's really hairy. There is, like I said, I'd say they're about a 15, 16 foot. It's what I call King Kong. He's solid black. He's got a brown chest. Got a little bit of white on, you know, a little bit of white on his chest, but it's solid, mostly brown. I've seen him enough to know exactly. The female looks, I'm thinking the female might be she's probably 6 to 7 feet tall. She's nowhere near the size of them. There's a little one that runs around over there. He might be 3 feet tall. I mean, but he's little. He's a baby. And the 15-foot King Kong always is with that female and that little one. So I'm thinking, you know, he's their protector.
So, Wayne, you know, in terms of, you know, family groups and the family working in groups as kind of watching over each other and signaling, you know, as people get close with wood knocks, have you heard any of that?
The knocks are rare. We've had maybe 3 knocks since they've been. You know, usually one knock came when I was out there taking pictures of a footprint. and that was a good solid knock. And then another knock came when my little girl was out there playing and was playing with one of the dogs, and she come running and saying, "They're knocking, Daddy, they're knocking." And I went down there and I heard it. So, but by that time you can't get those on audio.
Wayne, have you tried to, put any food out or any kind of offerings like that for these creatures?
Well, I did try it once, but then somebody warned me not to keep putting it out because the day you forget to put it out, they're going to come back. He said one did it down in Alabama. He said the guy forgot to put his food out. He come home and the Bigfoot, he took his central air unit and ripped it apart and threw it across the yard. And I was like, wow. But I did put a pretty good chunk of ribeye steak out there. I took a knife, cut a hole, put a rope through it, tied it up high enough where no bear could get it, no dog could get it because, and not only that, if a dog got it or a bear, they would yank it down. I go back the next day, there's 2 big teeth marks in that ribeye steak, and it's only a piece of that steak still hanging there, and something really big walked up, put their hands on it, and took a bite, and then walked away. They didn't yank it down or anything, so I know they're the ones that took it. I may have actually had Bigfoot DNA on that steak. I don't know. I mean, DNA is not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about, making sure these animals get protected, and they get protected, and maybe, just maybe, to get this land down here kept from being logged off again.
I can definitely understand that. So, Wayne, in terms of, what you're being tasked with here, you want to kind of promote that these creatures are real. At the same time, you're trying to keep them protected and not create a circus where you live. What are you doing down there in terms of, talking to local authorities, and at the same time, what do you think your best approach is from keeping it turning into a circus?
That's what I told the local news. I said, if you guys come down here, the one requirement I've got is you cannot tell them exactly. You can say they're in Reidsville, but you can't say where. I said, because I do not want a bunch of crazy hunters thinking they're going to come down here. Number one, they're not going to find them. They're not going to find them. They know how to disappear. Like I was telling my wife the other day, I said, for an animal that's been around thousands and thousands of years, that has perfected the way of hiding, I said, they know how to hide better. If I was practicing for 1,000 years and know how to hide, I said, I'd be pretty daggum good at it too. I said, people don't realize that they are living and breathing animals. They just know how to hide good.
Well, as the cliche goes, they are definitely the world champions of hide and seek. But, I recently had done a blog out on Sasquatch Syndicate too, where I was over in the Olympic National Forest, and I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'5", and I was easily able to disappear, in the woods and, across the country. These forested areas are very, very dense. It's not that hard, to be able to disappear, especially if you perfected it, like you said. So, Wayne, as you're having these experiences and talking to other folks in the area, have you ran across other folks that have had similar encounters?
People are telling me now. I've already figured out there is one over in Eden. I've heard there may be one in McLeansville, which is close to Greensboro. I've been talking to people on Facebook down in Concord, North Carolina. She says that she's on a lot of acres like that, and they've been hearing vocalizations and yells. I don't know. I tell anybody, it's like somebody was doing the average yell that you hear on TV. I said, no, that ain't my Bigfoot yell. I said, he don't. My Bigfoot went like this. He just went from the bottom up, and he went like this. He went, like that. It didn't sound like the usually, roar that I have heard the roars, but the one that visited me that night in the window show didn't sound like that.
Wayne, you'd mentioned that you'd taken pictures. You've seen them actually. You would take a picture, and then later when you would look at the picture, you were unable to see them. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Oh, yeah, well, I'll give you the best example. I've got a video. Now, I had some friends here that wanted to see them. Well, of course, they was hot and they weren't coming out. They did luckily see one over at the edge of the woods, and that was the mama one. As soon as they left, I came back in the house, and I went over there and looked, and I saw the young one. The young one come running out, jumped on a tree, and I saw him. I started recording him, and he jumped on the tree, started bouncing on that tree, and as I'm recording him, he disappears completely, and the tree keeps bouncing. I mean, and how in the world is that possible? You know, and the tree's still moving, so obviously he's still on the tree. And, you know, again, like I said, countless times when I've seen them with my own two eyes, and I'd be out there filming them, and then come right back in here, and I'd just have the hole. It looks like the image. It's still their image, except there's nothing there. It's like an outline of their body, but nothing there. So obviously they're, you know, I call it cloaking. They somehow know how to. They know how to. I think they know if they've got an ability where they can just somehow blend in with those trees and just disappear. But still, to see that baby one just disappear like that and just still keep bouncing up and down, I mean, that just told me they do have some kind of abilities, you know.
And for our listeners and for Wayne, you know, out on Sasquatch Syndicate, if you go out to topics under paranormal theory, we do have a section on cloaking if you want to check it out. And Wayne, so when you're out there taking pictures too, and for those listening, you know, a lot of times, you know, you may hear something in the woods. You know, these are very dense forests. One technique that a lot of researchers use is to take stills of, you know, forested area where you may be hearing something, and then going back and reviewing those on the camera. You know, with Sasquatch, they're such a great master at hide and seek and the art of, you know, blending in and camouflaging themselves in the environment. It's a great idea to, you know, at least take some stills, go back, review it later, and you might be surprised what you catch on the camera.
Did exactly the same thing. I went over there. I was at that river, and I was just looking around, and I felt like something was there. And they're sitting there talking about all the stuff that's happened to them, and I just started snapping pictures of every little spot that I thought might be one, and lo and behold, it wasn't but one, but it was one, and you could clearly see it sticking right out, watching us the whole time. And that's how I got good. Even at nighttime, if I'm out here at night with the dogs, I'll go over if I suspect they're in those woods, and I'll start snapping pictures left and right. With my stories, I got a lot of the proof. Even when he come up here and railed in the window, he left an imprint on my window.
Now, Wayne, how do your animals react to this? Is there a certain, you know, behavior that your dogs start to exhibit before this, and how do you feel that they're getting along with these creatures?
Well, at first they wasn't paying them no mind, and then it was like they noticed them. And then the next thing I know, one of my dogs was going sniffing around, finding their footprints and peeing on them. I found some really good footprints just because the dog went over and located them. And they seem to go out there now, and they know they've been in the yard, and they'll go around sniffing everywhere where they think they've been. And the other night when one had came to the window and yelled, I had one dog that sat right there at that window and would not leave it. And now ever since I think they didn't really pay them no mind at first. Now they know they're there, and now, you know, now I got a bigger problem. Bigger problem was is they can track them and go. They can track them and they'll go out there and run into one of them. And I don't want them to have to, you know, number one, risk getting hit by a car going across the road once they figure out exactly where they're at. And they know, they hear the whistles and they know what that whistle is. I mean, I can do that whistle in the house and you ought to watch them. You know what I mean? It's amazing how at first the dogs didn't respond to it. Now the dogs sleep in different parts of the house where used to they all piled up on my bed. Now you'll have two in there with my daughter. You'll have one in another room, and then you'll have two in the living room. It's almost as if they're guarding the place now.
So, Wayne, could you describe for our listeners kind of where the dogs go out to go to the bathroom? Do they have to wander far from the house?
Well, I've got a really huge backyard, and I'll just let them out. I've trained them where they can just go out on their own. I'll walk out there with them, you know, and I'll watch them, make sure they don't take off anywhere, you know, and most of the time they don't. But you know, you take one distraction and you could lose your dog. And so, I mean, but that's good. I've got them trained where I can just walk out there and they'll come back in when I tell them to.
Wayne, now that your dogs kind of know that Sasquatch are in the area, do they stay up closer to the house?
Well, they go, well, what they do, a couple of them I know, they go around the tree lines where I know the Sasquatches come out and hunt at night. They come over here and they come into my trees for some reason, and I do know when I pulled in last night that I must have been right in the middle of a chase because a deer looked like I was pulling in, I saw the deer, you know, coming from where they were at, and it looked like he was running from something. And So I mean, the deer had a look of fear in his eyes, and I'm thinking they were probably after it. You know, that's what they do. I done learned their sleeping habits and everything. They'll come out around as soon as it gets dark. They'll start going out hunting. They'll get out and they'll start hunting, or they'll get out and start moving around. And then, 3, 4 o'clock in the mornings, when if you get any activity out of them, they're going to come visit you around about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And my old brothers think I'm crazy, and I tell them, so you come down here and you'll see with your own 2 eyes. And I've had my cousins the same way, and unless you've had that experience and you've seen one, they're gonna doubt you, and then when you tell them to come down here and see with their own 2 eyes, and none of them live maybe 5 or 6 minutes from here, and none of them will come down here and see with their own 2 eyes. They just rather sit up there and call me crazy.
Well, Wayne, you're not the first person to be called crazy, and certainly, not the first person to be judged by, their friends or their siblings. And it's unfortunate, but, a lot of people would rather research from the couch or the comfort of their home in front of the computer than actually go out in the forest. A lot of times, Paul and I will go out on a night watch, and, we'll invite folks, and a lot of them will get there. They'll be excited, but, it'll kind of kick in as fear and anger. They'll be scared that they're there, then they'll be mad at us that they're there, and they'd rather just be in their tent than actually out in the forest, looking for a creature, potential monster. So anyways, try not to get upset with them. What else is also interesting, Wayne, is that it's not like that you've shared with your siblings any aggressive encounters. So it's interesting to me that they haven't came down and, checked out your property.
Yeah, how many experiences have I told you about right now where they broke anything or they threatened me in any way? And another thing people don't understand about them is once you understand them and you don't show no fear that you're scared of them, you're more interested in them like they are you, they'll like you for some reason. Those things like me. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but hey, it's pretty cool to know. I ain't got to worry about them coming over here killing any of my animals, or for that matter, breaking my door down,
Well, certainly so far so good, and we'll continue to wish you peaceful harmony with those on your property.
Yeah, well, and not only that, they can. I think they can sense things too. They can sense if you're gonna, you got any intents, and they don't see me running around here with no shotguns or no guns, and I would not. And it's like a guy just told me today. He said, "Are you gonna shoot any of them things?" I said, "Are you crazy?" I said, "Are you crazy?" I said, "I wouldn't dare shoot one of those things." I said, they're part of. I would say like this. I feel like if anybody was able to kill one of them, they should be charged with murder, because they're too close to us as far as what they can do and what they know. And when you go shooting something that basically is one of us, it just hadn't evolved like us, And who knows, they may be more evolved than we are. Goodness knows, they can sure hide.
Well, not only are they evolved, they're very aware of their environments. They live outside 24 hours a day. They're aware of that environment. They know if anything's different. And, it's not unlike us. I recently left the house, walked out to the car, told my wife I had forgot something, walked back in and moved 2 things in the living room. We came back about 3 hours later, and within, 2 or 3 minutes, she noticed that things had changed in the environment. So magnify that with a creature that lives outside 24 hours a day, that's there. They're aware of their surrounding, very similar to your own animals. We call it evolved, but, this is their home, and they're very aware of their surroundings.
I caught one with I just set a trail cam on my grill on the deck, and I come home and it looks like the trail cam had been moved. It looks like something had shook the trail cam, but it took a picture, and then I find what it looks like a leg and a hip of a Bigfoot, and it was so up close, but everybody kept saying, that was a bear, that was a bear. I said, bears don't look like this. I said, if you know my deck and you know how high he was up, I said, that's not a bear.
Other than the tree structures, Wayne, that you've seen on and near your property, have you experienced or witnessed any trees broken or twisted in your area?
Oh yeah. If you go back there, in fact, they've created a new one, and they took all the trees that were. I'm guessing they're using this as a hiding place, but they took the trees that I know were up higher and they broke them down where it looks like a shelter now. And it's like, you know, I used to could mow under it. Now I can't mow under it because the trees are down so low. But you can see where they snapped them. And not to mention, if you go into the woods, you find all the evidence. You find the evidence of the trees being broken and the big giant X that's in the middle of the thing. You know, you can obviously tell he bent the tree. He bent that tree. Something mighty big had to bend it. And the thing about it, I never ever thought to walk in those woods and investigate anything. So I don't know honestly how long they were in those woods before they moved across the road.
You know, one of the things regarding tree structures, and there's information out on our website at SasquatchSyndicate.com, you know, a lot of the tribes and a lot of the elders up here talk about tree structures as either signifying a significant moment or even potentially the number of members, you know, within that group or within that clan of Sasquatch that are living in the area. What does your tree structure look like?
There's one bent one way, another one bent another way, and then another one behind it bent over here. It's like 3 that's in that structure that I see. But I'm pretty positive there's 5 over there.
So, Wayne, as you're out there in the woods, you know, and you're looking around your property, look for tree breaks, you know, 90-degree angles, potentially all in the same direction. Just sharing with you and our listeners, you know, a lot of times, you know, Sasquatch, they don't want to give away their location. So, you know, you and I, we'd be walking through the forest, we'd find a game trail. That's the path of least resistance. So that's the way we're going to go. You know, but a Sasquatch is very, very smart. You know, they've perfected this. And it's the same way also, you know, they don't travel game trails because, you know, other game would pick up their scent. They know where they're at. And from a predatory perspective, it makes more sense, you know, that Sasquatch will make their own trails. And they mark that with things like tree breaks. And so we've we've had other folks, you know, send in pictures of a line of tree breaks that may go for, you know, 800 feet, you know, up to, you know, almost a mile in length at tree breaks, you know, between 10 foot, 15 foot. And it's very interesting because, you know, that's easy for them to follow. You know, it's kind of a direction path maybe for a juvenile or another member of their clan or to mark the way to their, you know, location. So just curious if you've seen anything like that.
What I'm going to do, I just ain't had time to do it. I'm going to take the camcorder out here one day, and I'm going to go through those woods, and I'm going to videotape every bit of it.
So, Wayne, you've mentioned a couple times that you're aware of when they're sleeping, and I was just curious, have you seen the activity of one watching over the group while the other 2 are sleeping?
Well, what they do is I've seen the 2 really big ones. They sleep beside each other. They are either one's leaning on the other, and the other one's leaning, but they're usually in the same area of sleep. The female's not far from, and she's sleeping. A lot of times I find her sleeping on the ground with the baby. The other one, I don't see exactly where he sleeps, but he's you know. I see him. I get more video of him most of the time than I do the really big ones. You know, the really big ones are easy to spot, especially when they're asleep. You know, as far as what's going, you know, the way they are right now. I mean, if I wanted to film them right now, it's raining. They could be somewhere out there pretty close if it's raining, but.
So, Wayne, we've seen other reports of Sasquatch either sleeping, leaning on each other, leaning against a tree, even standing and kind of dozing in and out while they're day watching. I'm just curious what you've experienced.
Well, a lot of times, like when that big one's asleep, he takes about 3-4 tree spaces by himself. And I have caught him where he's just standing there asleep, but that, like you said, next beside of him will be the female and the little one.
Wayne, going back to your videos and pictures and using the trail cams, do you remember what model or manufacturer you were using?
Yeah, I didn't forget. Well, Wild something. I didn't forget the name of it. That was the first one I had, and it did okay if you were doing just shots of the house, you know, around the house. But then I got the it was Wild Games. My little girl just told me it's Wild Games. That's the one I was originally using. And then the Moultrie was the next one. The Moultrie was a really good trail cam. I mean, the Moultrie was really, really picking up. It was the one picking up the shots across the road. I mean, when you get your trail cam and it's got 2,000 shots from one day on it, and every shot was coming from that one spot across the road. you start wondering what's over across the road is that big that's making that trail cam go off. And that far away, too. I mean, you're talking about, I mean, that's a good couple thousand feet. I mean, where that trail cam was, it's not supposed to pick up past 100 feet. It was grabbing pictures of that area over there, and if you blew them up, you'd see them. Like I said, it got to where, you know, it was fun with the trail cams, but then I started realizing, you know, they're not coming over here anymore, and I'm not getting what I call, you know, I'm not getting the proof and the fun that came with the proof, you know, anymore. It's
right.
just like that.
Well, Wayne, I hope sharing your encounter will certainly help others to come out and, you know, share their story. Again, you can reach us at SasquatchSyndicate.com and click the Contact Us button, or you can send me an email, Chuck at Sasquatch Syndicate. But, Wayne, what do you think you're going to do next, and what would you like others to do?
You know, I want to change things, man. I don't want people to be uptight about, you know, their experiences. I want people to, not to mention just share them, but, you know, if you get any kind of proof, put it up there and let me see it. I mean, because I want everybody to start realizing, you know, we're not crazy. You know, if you got that footage and you got pictures or whatever, go ahead and share it. Don't expect people to think you're crazy. I mean, there's been so many people I've talked to now that since I've been doing this that now are starting to come around and starting to share their pictures and stuff.
So, Wayne, I know you live out in a rural property, but have you thought about doing a town hall?
No, I mean that we were talking about doing something like that, you know, at some point. Me personally, I want it established and proven. However we can get it established and proven.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you know, how many other people you may bump into that have also had encounters with these creatures.
I just talked to a guy. A guy was posting about black bears. I said, well, I got Bigfoots down here, and the guy said, well, guess what? I've had two up the road here that I've been dealing with. That's when he asked me, was I going to shoot them? And I'm like, no. So I'm thinking to myself, now there's a guy, I drive that road every night and never even knew about them. And now, you know, I know he has them. And then there's another city that a guy says he has them. So, yeah, once we find enough people, and not to mention, I can figure out what neighbors around here. You know what's weird? I got two neighbors on the left of me, right? Two different houses, and those Bigfoots never ever go in their yard ever.
Well, Wayne, thanks again for, you know, keeping these creatures protected while you're collecting evidence, and we really appreciate you sharing that information. So, Wayne, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
This ain't a joke down here. This is real. And we need to find them. Whoever knows the means to be able to get this area protected before next thing I know, they decide to go in and chop the rest of the trees down where they're living.
Well, Wayne, thanks again for coming on Sasquatch Syndicate and sharing your encounter with our guests. We really appreciate it. I know our listeners do as well.
Sure. I'm glad to tell everybody. I mean, I hope everybody decides, you know, to give y'all a call and let y'all know what you know, if you've got experiences. I mean, my goodness, I got a lifetime of them already, and I've only had them here about 8 months.
Well, Wayne, please keep in touch with the show. Keep the emails coming. As I get videos and I get pictures from Wayne, I'll be posting those up at SasquatchSyndicate.com and on our social media blogs. So thanks again, everybody, for following Sasquatch Syndicate. One just quick announcement. The International Bigfoot Conference is going to be held September 2nd through September 4th out in Kennewick, Washington. For those that haven't bought your tickets yet, you can pick those up at the internationalbigfootconference.com. Paul and I will be there. We do have a vendor table, so please stop by and say hello. We'd love to meet you in person. Also, before we go, I just wanted to wish everybody a happy July and hopefully a great start to summer. I also wanted to thank everybody that reached out via social media with comments and suggestions. We really do appreciate your feedback and positive comments. So thanks again for listening to the show, and we really hope you enjoyed this month's episode. This concludes our July 2016 podcast. Sasquatch Syndicate will return on Monday, August 1st. Thanks to all our listeners and those who have been out to our website and those following us on social media. Sasquatch is a controversial subject, so for all the believers and disbelievers and those that will tell you they have all the answers, just remember, we're flying through space at 700 miles per hour. Buckle up.